Hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to get to our first question. This is our Ask an Architect webinar. We plan to do these monthly with James and myself hosting. So we had about 6 good questions come in prior to the webinar today. So some of those folks may be here to clarify or follow up. Some of them may not, but they asked some really good questions. I wanted to get to them all. So first thing I wanted to get into, James, it's Thursday morning for you. Good morning.
Mm-hmm. Good morning.
And it's time for our Ask an Architect. So James, I sent those questions over to you this afternoon so you could look them over, but I wanted to start with the one about the cost estimates. Especially when it comes to structural exterior versus interior expenses. We do know that there's different choices that impact those numbers, but when you're talking to our clients in the design phases, how do you help them plan for the cost estimates on material selections? I think is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, sure. And I was just going to note on the questions that we had coming in as well, just before I get into the cost breakdown. It looks like we've got some good questions there. They're all towards the start or beginning of a project, which is kind of interesting. So yeah. Dawn and Jim, if you want to add in anything else, because your process is a lot further along. So if you think of anything you want to add to these, either put them in chat or just, ask them once we finish these questions and we'll go over them.
Well, that's a good point, James. And Mr. Other James, Mr. Zimmerman James, and Don, both of you guys are far along. We want our other clients to learn from you. So if there's things you've learned along the way that you think would be helpful, please chime in and just feel free. If you want to do a hand raise or anything like that, we'll hand the mic over, so to speak. But James, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's a good point.
Absolutely, yeah, because I mean, we have such a wide variety of builds going on, right? So there's a couple of questions in there. It's like the cost estimate of just an exterior versus heated space sort of thing. And then it's a question about like how much do you go into the interiors? Right, because the exteriors could be, we were talking about this before the call, Jack, it's just like traditional construction, just the wood framing, concrete foundations, things like that, versus like SIPS construction, which is like basically a prefabricated insulated panel that you can use, and just what the costs go into them. Just for those sorts of things, most builders will have a number in mind. We see that they vary. They're a bit higher than they used to be a couple of years ago, obviously. So we see that they vary really from like $200 a square foot all the way up to like $350 or $400 a square foot, depending on the builder that you're using and the team that's behind them. That can vary again when it's like how familiar is the builder with the subs he's using? How much does he have to teach them? What type of construction they're going to do? How many times have they done it? Are they using the same, if they're doing like concrete or something like that for the foundations, are they using all brand new formwork, or are they the type of construction firm that reuses their formwork over and over and over again, sort of thing, which is fine. And then it can also come down to engineering as well. I think both looking at Dawn and James on the call here, both of you guys have very unique designs. Probably some engineering that's going to go into them, which makes construction a little bit more costly, but it's a really unique and interesting design versus if you're talking like a traditional sort of house or modern farmhouse or something like that. That obviously there's less variables in that, less engineering that's going to go into those sorts of things. So therefore the cost comes down a little bit. Then when you compare that to interiors, again, this is more of a comparison between what the builder has already provided for, or what they have in mind, what they would provide for a normal build, versus what the client wants to include in the build, right? So when a GC is putting numbers together, they'll have a nominal fee for, hey, I'm going to do, for the bathroom, I'm going to do normal vanities with a marble top. I'm going to put tile on the floor. I'm going to paint the rest of the walls. I'm going to have a fiberglass base in the shower, for example.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And those are things that that might be their standard. And then from that point, the client will come in and say, no, I want tiles in the shower. I want tiles all the way up to the top of the mirrors. And then you can paint from that point upwards. The floor is going to be tile, yes, but we want this higher type of tile with this slip rating on it, and then the paint that's in the room is going to be like a anti-moisture or something like that, so there's less mold and stuff like that. And it can even come down to the lights that are in the ceiling and the exhaust fan, the heat globes, anything along those lines. So you can see that the input from the client is really important. Now, we don't do like an intensive interior design part of our projects because I'm an architect and not an interior designer. So we always have people that we can recommend to join a team. And then we also find that some of our construction GCs that we go to either have their own contacts for interiors, or that they're going to have an embedded team for interiors because it is such an important part of it. Ultimately, we let the costs come down to the GC at the end of the day because they're the ones who are going to be sourcing materials. They're the ones that are going to be talking to the client and really choosing those things. I can nominate a few things, but ultimately it would only be if I was to talk to a client and they said, hey, I really want this tile and I found it from this location. I would then say in my drawings, yes, that's what we want to use. But if the contractor can find something very similar for a fraction of the cost, I would have that contractor then talk to the client about that and say, yes, we can do this, but it's 10 times cheaper. So would you prefer using this sort of material or whatever it is? So the GC is very important at the end of the day of selecting those materials with the client.
Yeah, so it's definitely possible to get estimates during design, but you've kind of talked about our thought process.
Yeah.
As far as like how are we trying to get good answers, because it's the biggest source of anxiety is how much is it going to cost, and there's not really this like real simple answer like, well, it's X per square foot because there's so many variables.
Exactly.
Dawn,
I can use like a nominal fee to begin a project, which is pretty good, and I think it's on the higher sort of side of things in most cases. But then, yeah, as we get further and further into it, you can definitely like narrow that number down to something that is actually going to be that build.
Yeah, that's good. James or Don, would y'all like to chime in, or would you like any more clarity on that?
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Because I have to do this on my phone. My computer's acting up. Can you hear me all right?
You're great. Yeah, we can hear you fine.
All right. I would just add for those that are maybe on the line, the lessons learned. This is a fifth or sixth house that my wife and I have built as we've moved around. And one of the lessons that we've learned is that it comes down to a rule of kind of pay me now or pay me later. So as James was talking about, we've got a lot of engineering that we potentially are putting into this house. If you want to have higher ceilings, you want to have structural changes to the house. My suggestion is it's always better to put that in now. And then when the GC gets involved and you have to start looking at, all right, we do have to live within a budget. Maybe we do go with a little bit cheaper flooring and cheaper top, because that's superficial things. Those are easy to change out in the years to come. But it's really hard to put not 9-foot ceilings in or 10-foot ceilings in if you only did 8 foot in the basement.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's a smart way to think of it. Don, what's your experience been, or do you need any follow-up questions answered to that?
Gosh, no, this is our first house that we're having built. It's like all completely new territory, so we're just like definitely newbies. Eric is teaching right now. I wish he could join the call. He should be coming in the next 20 minutes, I think. And at that time, if you see me waving, it's because, James knows we have so many dogs. So I'll be like, muting, I can't talk right now. They're all barking. So, no, this is our first time. We're really excited. Enjoying the process for sure. Definitely. So just wanting to hear, other feedback and other experiences.
Yeah. James is only a little bit further along than you are in the design. You're getting pretty close to the detailing phase, but Don, your home's going to be up in Talking Rock, which is not too far from where James is building in LJ. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
Speaking of Talking Rock, a little teaser. Kaylin just finished up a photo shoot of one of our homes that was built up there, and I'm very excited to share it with y'all because it's gorgeous. It's right on the creek in Talking Rock, so you guys look forward to that. Well, great. How about strategies for site challenges? Because that project I just thought of and mentioned, I thought of that because of the site challenges. That home in particular, in Talking Rock Creek Resorts, is it's almost a cliff. I would say it is a cliff. James and I walked that property. Yeah, there's a video of us going like this to just get from the bottom of the creek to the home site. But that's a great story, James, and I think a lot of people express a lot of anxiety about homes with geographical characteristics to them. Dawn, I know your home's in the mountains too, so thinking that through, how do we approach that, James? What are questions that we ask? Especially on a riverside lot, that comes up a lot. So how do we weigh that out when we're talking about site selection and orientation?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example, actually, that lot in question. And when you guys see the photos, you'll see what we mean by it.
I'm going to try to bring it up while we're talking, so yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And I mean, most of the projects that we do in North Georgia are obviously in the mountains or on some sort of slope. So a few things that I know we have a couple of other questions that are like what to do when getting started. So this might go into that a little bit as well. But when you have a site that has some limitations like that, whether that's topography or a creek or river or anything like that, I think having your survey do a really detailed job of that site, getting the topo around where you want to build at like as a minimum, I think is really important. We've learned a lot of lessons about that early on, as we don't have enough information, and then if a builder doesn't have enough information going into it, they can only put a cost estimate against what they think on a site visit, right? So, and there's only so much they can do anyway, even with the topography and a site visit, because you don't know what you're going to dig up when you start digging. But having the contractor come to the site, getting a site survey with topography on it, and then having a site survey that has setbacks from anything on the site that's, obviously is going to have setbacks from the front of the site, the road itself. In the case of this one, there was a creek down the bottom of the site, so setbacks back from that, you're going to have flood issues and things like that. I know James and Dawn, you guys don't have any setbacks from anything. James, you have the road coming in, but we're far enough back from it. Dawn, you guys are on such a big lot that no one's going to even see your house, so you don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. These are great photos, Jack. Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to this one's pretty close to the creek. You can see from there.
Mm-hmm. So this one didn't have any flood issues per se, because the house is obviously well above the creek. You can't even see the creek down there, but it's below those trees there. But it is still important. So one of the fun things about this project, I don't know if you have any photos down on the creek. Not yet, it looks like.
I took some of my own when I was out there, but these are mostly of the inside and right around the home.
Yeah. So these guys, actually, we approached the county and talked to them about the kind of the small creek or the river that was running through the site. And the clients wanted to build a small kind of jetty kind of platform that kind of cantilevered it out a little bit over the water, and then determining what we could do for that, because obviously there's setbacks at that point. So there are always ways around, or things that we can get ahead of and talk to the county, whether that's a county, an HOA, whether that's a city. Sometimes cities are a little bit more strict with that sort of thing. In that case, they allowed it to happen. They said it had to be like a specific type of construction. If it floods, then it has to break away in a certain type of way. And again, the GC was part of that conversation the whole time as well. Often they have a lot of, well, the GC in that case had some experience building that sort of structure before, I believe. So it wasn't too much of a worry. But getting out and having conversations with the relevant authorities, I think, is a really good step, so that the any site challenges that we can identify early on can be dealt with. Just looking at anything else in that question as well. We've had other projects as well that have identified specific trees that
Yeah.
they want to
Oh
keep.
yeah, like a tree survey. Yeah, you got neighborhoods that may not allow you to just lop down anything you want. And then there's not even the HOA. Some of that's frontage. Like the HOA doesn't want the frontage. And then some of it would be like an environmental core or something like that, where they don't want land disturbance done close to the water.
Exactly. So all those sorts of things, even rocks and things like that. I know, James, we were talking about the vegetation on your site, landscaping as well. We've had clients in the past who have identified on a survey what rocks, what trees they want to keep on the site, and then sometimes they build decks around them, put holes in decks, get them really close to the house. And there's challenges that come with that as well. Obviously, tree movement, falling down, land subsidence when they're doing the foundations and stuff like that with roots and rocks and things like that. So, yeah, a lot of those sorts of things, but getting out in front of them as much as we can, I think, is good. If you do have a site that has all those sorts of things when it comes to landscaping, I would recommend bringing a landscape architect on board at some point. It doesn't have to be right at the beginning, but it depends on where your priorities as a client lie. And then, again, that might come down to the GC that you use as well. They might have a landscape person that they involve, because they're obviously going to be doing earth moving. And then, so the other thing that often happens a lot on these slope sites, and these on bigger houses particularly, is the survey team will obviously do a proposed survey at the end that will give us all the levels. So it tells us how far the foundations are going to sit into the earth, how tall the building is going to be, and things like that. They will often do a stormwater management plan as well, if requested. Yeah. Some counties require it, some HOAs require it. It just depends on your situation, but that is often very important, especially with a site that we just saw in those photos where the water was coming down directly into the house. So having that water diverted around the house is really important.
Yeah, so even if it's not necessary to have a structural engineer or a landscape architect or civil engineer, things like that, it's still important to check those boxes and ask those questions. Like, have we talked to the county? Have we talked to the HOA? Because land disturbance is not just because you own the land doesn't mean you can do anything you want with it, unfortunately. And then what's possible, not just what's legal, so to speak, but also what's possible. So yeah, James, Dawn, do y'all?
Yeah, I'll tie this back to like the previous point there, because Shelly, my wife, and I, we spent a lot of time trying to find the right lot. We found some really nice lots that were priced like great, and we had never built on like in a mountain kind of an area on slopes like that. So we're like, oh yeah, we can do this, because we've seen other houses that were done like that. And when we started doing a little bit of research, we realized, wow, we're going to be putting in, $100,000 to $200,000 of money just to get them developed. So if you're really at the beginning stages, there's a lot of beautiful areas all throughout North Georgia. Shop around if you're not tied to a specific lot just yet, because we were able to find something in the same community that we want that just turned up, and the lot was a little more expensive because it had great views, but it had a flat top. And so it's right off the road, and we're going to be able to go in there and save that money and put it into the build rather than just the development cost just to turn over the land to get a foundation put into it.
Well, that's a great point. I was talking to a client this morning, and she sent me a link to a piece of property at Kusawati Resort, and I'm not kidding. It was listed for $4,500.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's insane. The amount of money, like that's so cheap. But then I looked at it, and it's
unbuildable.
It might be, it might be. But even if it's buildable, to your point, James, even if you could build on that lot, how much is it? 100,000 that you're going to put into? What's the catch? And there's a valley on that piece of property, so the flood zone could be really hard to identify. I mean, there's a lot of questions that come up, but I think a lot of people start drooling when they see a $5,000 piece of property, and they're like, "Oh, I could do a lot with this." But I think those questions, like both Jameses have brought up, are very important to consider when we're looking at a piece of property that we love the views, but how are we going to make it work? So it's easy to get excited, but what's that process going to take us to? Dawn, did you want to weigh in on the the site location dilemma, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, just when we were first looking at different, lots, it was like originally my husband Eric was like, "Oh, I want to be by water." And then, we were looking at the summertime and then we were getting bitten by so many bugs. I was like, "I don't want to live
What a
by
good
water."
point.
That
What a
was
great
one of
point.
those things. I was like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't want to live by water." And it was interesting because I love animals and I have this vision to get goats and things like that. So I was like, I don't want to be in an HOA area because, they have all their restrictions. Well, it turned out that, after looking within our budget at several different properties, it was like, I don't think I want to live on the certain, lots that are within our budget because it was incredible. There's some trashy areas. One, a lady came out and she claimed that the city had been dumping on the lot that we were looking at, and then the realtor was like, I think she's just making that up because
She's trying to
sons
right?
go on their ATVs and just they use that land for like their own free space. So she was purposely trying to block people from buying it. So it was really interesting. So we ended up on now the lot that we're designing on is within an HOA property.
Well, it's a really nice neighborhood, though.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
right, and so interestingly enough, Jack, you saw that lot, but we actually did end up just in February getting the lot right next to it that is not in HOA property, so it's unrestricted. And I was like, so I could put my goats on that side and the house right there and connect them, So it's interesting to as we're designing for the HOA lot that has certain restrictions, but then also thinking about that we have this other property that could just be like, maybe we could do whatever with it, So, so just all these things we had to think about,
Well, those are some great examples because it's hard to think about the bugs, for example, when you're looking at the lake.
Right.
James, what were you going to say?
Well, I was also going to add on that. I mean, like Dawn, with your project, we've been having a lot of fun with, we've been able to explore a lot of different looks for the house and stuff like that, but it keeps on coming back to some of the restrictions with the HOAs. We both look at images and we're like, oh, that'd be amazing. We could build that. And then I'm like, we can't do that because of the roof. Sort of thing. It's just like the roof just not a tall enough pitch. So it's like, oh, that's frustrating. So yeah, but then it's also a good point because they do control the neighborhood. So you don't have people with RVs parking on your land. So, that sort of stuff. It's good.
Those are great. Well, this next question, I'm actually going to turn the tables. This isn't going to be Ask an Architect. This is going to be Ask a Homeowner because so James and Dawn, this is specifically for each of you. So whoever wants to go first, let's say you're talking to somebody who's starting or considering starting a custom home project. What kind of guidance would you give them? I'm going to leave a little open-ended, but if you're going to say, do this one thing, or here's some really, big piece of advice or big lesson I learned, what guidance would you give to somebody who's even thinking about doing this for the first time? Because you guys have done it, and I think it'd be good to hear it from your perspective. James, you've done it a few times, so why did you keep doing it? That's crazy.
So it's you want to get what you want, and that's the reason to build a home. We all have probably bought homes in the past where you buy it off of the MLS, it's already existing and all that, and you think that you like it, and for most part you like just about everything. That's why you bought it. But then once you move into it, it's like, oh, I don't like this wall here, I don't like these doors, I don't like this, and then it starts to change. You want to change it a lot. And so I think you are much more tied to the home when you build it from scratch because you're getting exactly what you want. But the advice I would offer with regards to that is that really you have to study these designs, and James does a great job with the designs. The 3D renderings that he does are awesome because nothing, picture's worth 1,000 words, and the 3D rendering's worth like 1,000,000 words to really get that feel as you're kind of driving around the house and see what that looks like. And the house I'm sitting in right now is one that we built, and we're down in South Florida right now, and that we thought we knew everything. It was a spec, builder. So it wasn't as custom as what we're trying to do up in North Georgia, but we made so many changes. We poured over those drawings, and we still, to this day, we're looking at, we shouldn't have done that. I didn't realize that's how that was going to look. So you really need to study those drawings, understand exactly what that's going to feel to walk through it. And, I'd say those 3D renderings are going to be a godsend to kind of walk through that and get that feel of what that fly through is like.
It's such a great point. And I think listening to your architect and asking questions, I think what you guys have benefited from, because I whether I'm involved in all of your projects or not, I read through those updates because I like to see how projects are coming along, and it's fun. But what the most successful projects we have are when people are asking good questions and then taking it and studying those designs. And if they don't understand a design, asking for more clarity, and then having the opportunity to meet with James as much as it takes. So having as many interactions as it takes to be clear. That's really good advice, James. Thank you. Trying not to get too confused with two Jameses, but I hope
you can call me Jay. We'll go with Jay.
Yeah, that's right. You told me on the phone that you prefer Jay anyway. I think it's because your name pops up under your photo there, and okay. So Jay actually helps me a lot. Nobody calls you Jay Z though.
There you go. You won't forget it.
Dawn, what about you? If you were going to give advice to someone doing this for the first time, what sage wisdom would you give?
I was just going to say, so I shouldn't feel so bad that we've changed. I don't know how many times on James, like, oh, actually, we had the double A frame idea. And then we're like, actually, let's do this. Let's put the no silo. No. And then Eric is like, let's put this glass staircase thing. And I'm going,
that's one of my favorite things.
Oh my gosh.
That the most recent one,
yeah. So I was like, well, I guess, and of course we have a couple of adjustments we need to meet with James on, but for us, we're really hoping this will be like, that'll be it. This is the house that we're just going to retire. And so we're constantly thinking about, but we looked at the staircase. I said, but Eric, what happens when we get old? Like, that's a lot of little stairs to fall down and all of that. So, we're just really trying to think. And for me, I'm always like, James, but I need to have the pet room. Like, it has to be like this because I'm always going to have my dogs and who knows whatever else, so a lot of our house is built around the fact that I have to have a pet the designated pet room because Eric wants them separated. I've got actually 5-7 dogs around here just laying around, and he's like, "No, we don't want that anymore." Well, just my first thought, just to answer your question though, is as far as just taking time looking at the land. I mean, just initially, and even with builders, and then just different companies. I know, Jack, you met with me, and oh gosh, now I can't remember his name.
Probably Drew.
Yes, Drew. And you guys are so awesome to meet with us, before we even gave any kind of money. You were just like, let's meet them and see, and just taking the time to meet with people and talk with builders and just, to do some research in that, because I think that's just so important. And we were so happy with the communication between you and Drew, right at the get-go. And, we couldn't move forward because we were in the process at the time of buying our building for the music academy, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but we have this opportunity to buy this building for the music academy, so we have to wait. And it was a whole year later. And I said, Jack, I think we're ready to at least just go on to step one. I think that just having that initial research and being comfortable with, whoever is the designer, architect initially, and even our realtor was this great. We just happened to, the kind of the sad story is that I was just looking at different plots of land, and we had this amazing Colombian realtor who went through creeks and all kinds of different scenarios with us to go and look at the lands. And it ended up that the property that we ended up with was one that I actually found on my own. So he ended up not getting part of the deal. And I felt so bad. And I was like, hey, I promise at some point I will get a piece of land and I will involve you in that purchase. So,
Yeah.
but even with him, he was amazing, and I think we just got lucky with that. But, when we were looking at Reynard, I was looking at a whole bunch of different companies and just looking at, videos and pictures. And I mean, you guys do such a great job with your pictures. I think Eric might be here, so the sound might get a little bit loud, but I'll just mute myself. So, just
That's
the
fine.
initial research of the land and who you're going to be working with, I think is very important.
Yeah, and I hear that like the importance of having a team and having support, and you wouldn't have gotten where you are today without that realtor who is helping you along the way. So, yeah, I appreciate the sentiment of wanting to respect people's efforts, but also I think the right kind of people are just excited to get you closer. And I remember meeting with you just saying, "Hey, even if you don't choose us, um, you're going to get the home built if you really want to, and you're going to use every interaction that you have to get closer to that goal." And that's why we exist. Like that's why James and I do what we do is we want to help everyone get closer to that goal. So there's a lot of things we'll do for free, like a site visit and a consultation. And our hopes are like, even at the end of that, like you're that much closer to getting the home built, and we've given you something valuable. And I was really flattered that you came back a year later, because I knew that there was complexities to owning your own business and the music academy. And yeah, I'm really proud of where you've come. And hi, Eric. It's good to see you and the puppies. Oh no.
Yeah, there's one.
And you guys talked a lot about lifestyle and how important that is, Dawn. The dogs, going up and down the stairs. Are we going to want to do that when we're older? That's really good advice for anybody who's wanting to build a home. Think about what it's going to be 20 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be living in this home? What's the legacy going to be? Are you, even if nobody lives in a home forever, so what are you going to leave behind? All of those things are good questions. Thanks for sharing, both of y'all. I appreciate you letting me give you a pop quiz, because you did not expect that question, but you guys handled it with a lot of grace, and I really appreciate that. Our last question, James, I wanted to get into a little bit more land. We had a lot of people asking about land when they were, again, there was a lot more questions that came in than attendees. So the good news is people are curious, and I'm sure they're going to be watching the video when I send this out. But we got some really good questions from people who are really early on. The folks I know particularly who responded to my invites were people who are still considering, do I want to get into this? So what are some of the things we want to think about? Dawn hit on some of those when researching land, like, are you really going to want to be that close to the water, for example? But especially in places like LJ, Jay could probably speak to this as well. But what are some of the things that you would advise a potential landowner, potential home builder to think about when they're looking at land in North Georgia? And I do want to slide James, if you could talk a little bit about tiny homes.
Sure.
We would say accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. I think that was kind of the tag on that people were asking about is, if I'm looking at land, what can I do there?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll throw that out at you, James, and I'll stop talking.
I think we've covered a lot with the selection of land. I do think it's the combination of things, right? It's obviously the things that Jay and Dawn have been talking about previously, and then finding the team that can help you get the land, if that's a realtor, if that's someone that can actually trust the land with you and find something. With the tiny homes, I guess that brings in a different type of complexity. There are some neighborhoods in North Georgia that have a maximum build of like 1,000 square feet, which is interesting. And I remember the first client that came from that neighborhood, and I was like, no, that can't be.
Yeah, Jake's Landing in particular in LJ.
Yeah, because normally there's a minimum of like 1,500 or something like that.
They really are a tiny home community.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a few of them these days. So looking and talking to the HOA about those things, or the ARB, whatever that neighborhood's going to call it, and just making sure that you're okay with the size of the home. If you're looking for a tiny home, making sure that the minimum is as small as you want it, if the maximum is is, too small, then that might be an issue. 1,000 square feet is a very small house. That's basically a 3-car garage for people that are trying to put it in their mind. How small it is. It is hard for a designer, including me, to design something that is 1,000 square feet and tiny. 1,200 is quite doable. I've done a couple of those now, but 1,000, yeah, that's tough. We often we don't break any rules, but we like to bend them where we can. So if we can get it to that point, then that's great. But then also, I think I can tie tiny homes back into construction costs, because we do get a lot of people that come with tiny homes and they say, hey, I just want to do 1,500, or I just want to do 2,000 square feet. And my budget's only like 350 or 400,000. He's like, well, that is good, but it doesn't always equal your square footage cost is as low as building something that's 6,000 square feet, for example.
Right.
With a 6,000 square foot, you're actually expending the cost over a bigger house. Whereas when you're building something that is a tiny home, we've done some A-frames that are 1,500 square feet, and they've come out to like $700,000 because everything is custom in a tiny home. Like, if you think of like a 3-car garage, for example, we might cost it out like at $125, $150 per square foot. That's just a concrete base and plywood, plasterboard walls and plasterboard or gypsum ceiling. But if that whole thing, same size, was a bathroom, you'd be costing it out at like $400 a square foot. So it'll come back to what's going into that space. So a custom tiny home is pretty much when all of it is custom. There's a lot of windows fitting into a tiny space, so a lot of your walls are glazed, and that's a huge cost, because that's the most expensive type of wall cladding there is, glass. You have to think about those sorts of things. So tiny home doesn't always equal low cost unless it's a tiny, traditional home, which isn't very common. So yeah, there's those sorts of things to consider as well. They're also very fun to design, and they're a huge challenge. But it can also have implications on like the time period it takes to design it and stuff like that, trying to fit everything in. Trying to achieve the Instagram feed that you're showing me is also another fun thing to incorporate. So there's all those sorts of things to consider with a tiny home. And then, of course, land purchase and stuff like that. I'm thinking of that cheap piece of land that you were talking about before, Jack, if it's the one I'm thinking of. It's like, that is a small piece of land, half an acre. It does have a creek on it though, and then it does want a tiny home on it. But I know that we've looked at land just like that, and it's like, you can build what you want, but it's super close to the road. So then there's the considerations of your setbacks. People are going to be able to see your house, and they're going to be able to see into your house. So all the glazed windows are great from the inside, but they're also great from the outside for anyone who loves people watching. So there's all those sorts of things to consider as well. There's a lot that goes into it.
And I think sometimes I talk to a lot of clients before they come to you, of course, James, because that's my job. But the people who disappear are the ones who think they've got some kind of a silver bullet out there, or they can outsmart the system or outsmart the process, and it just doesn't work. Not that buying the cheap land is always a good example of that, but that could be an example of somebody thinking, I found something nobody knows about, and I'm going to do it this, it's going to be really cheap because I'm going to, figure it all out. But the more I listen to Dawn, the more I listen to Jay, it's do good research, talk to people, listen, ask questions. All of those things go a really long way. And then think about the future. Just think about what is it going to look like long term. And that's just my advice as I talk to people. It's the more you think there's like this quick way or secret way to do it, the more you're setting yourself up for disaster, because you're attached to that expectation that it's not going to cost more than this, and it's going to be really super easy, and it's going to look just like that on Instagram. And the thing that's going to be your home is going to be something maybe not exactly what you envisioned in your mind. Dawn, you're a great example of that. You guys have gone through a lot of iterations. Like, could it be this? Could it be that? And that's the process, though, because what it's actually going to be is the dream home, and the dream home comes about after you've gone through the process of actually designing something that works for that property, for your budget, for your taste, for your lifestyle, for all the dogs, for all the music, for all the things that are happening. Those are great questions. Thank you for indulging me, because I get excited about this topic as well. I love seeing people's homes get designed and built. They're so creative. But Jay, Dawn, I'd like to open it up to you. We got just a few minutes left. What questions do y'all have for James? You've gotten to work really closely with him and ask him questions all the time, but now that you got a captive audience, what things would you still like to learn?
Dawn, ladies first. Go ahead, Dawn, if you or your husband have anything, and then I'll jump in.
I'm just flagging Eric's trying to get dinner. He's like staring at me.
Hey, Eric.
Do you have
Yes,
anything
really are.
to say?
In the middle of family life.
I'm just like listening in, guys.
I caught him off guard.
Yeah, you put him on the spot.
Yeah, he's used to that. You know,
Well, I appreciate you including him, because that's cool.
he said he loves the last design. We really do love it, James. So I can't think of any particular specific questions right now. I mean, I'm sure they'll come, as we're going through the design process. But I just had to say, it's interesting because I originally was looking for land because my mom did the whole let's buy land. They're in Colorado. I'm from Colorado. They bought land and they built a tiny home, and it's 680 square feet. It's made out of 4 storage containers, 2 on the main floor and then 2 on the top. And it's just it's plenty for my parents. Of course, they don't have all of the dogs that I have, and they have 12 acres. But, with us, I was thinking, it would be fine with that. But even just actually looking through the designs and all of that, and in our HOA property, the minimum square footage is 1,200 square feet. And I was like, that's almost double of my mom's. We could do that. But now going through it, and we're like, I don't think 1,200 square feet. It's going to be quite enough, So it's interesting, to hear you say that. Of course, for tiny homes, you have to consider that those are custom made. So I'm almost like, should we make it bigger than James? But I mean, it's not, ours isn't so tiny, right? So
Yeah, but you guys have learned a lot along the way, and all of your thoughts have been so valuable. Just I think hearing the good and the challenge and everything in between of what it's like to come into it with fresh eyes for the first time or the 5th time, Jay. It's great to just hear from y'all. James and I get to sit and be a part, but it's your personal experience and the things that you guys have experienced is so valuable to hear. So thank you, Dawn, for sharing and including us in your evening life while Eric's getting dinner ready. So I appreciate how personal all of these interactions are when it comes to building a home, because it's a very personal thing. But yeah, Jay, what questions might you have, or even just comments?
Yeah, so one question, and I know that James and I, we're starting to deal with this right now, and I know other people are going to have to deal with this, is HOAs. So HOAs, everyone's different. Every ARB, ACC, whatever you call them, the review board, they're all different. They're people just like us. And what I'm finding that is going to be a challenge, I think, with this one, and it'll go unnamed for now, is that we've got some new folks that are on that, and the ARB has been going back and forth a lot with some really great designs that James came up with. And it meets the guidelines, but we're seeing that they are getting more into the aesthetics. And I'm fearing that I might have an uphill battle because they're getting into something that's not necessarily design related or requirements per the documentation and the requirements of the community, but more about aesthetics. And so my question would be, I'm sure you guys have had to deal with this, Jack and James, how do you manage when you've got you don't want to, upset your new neighbors in the HOA. You want to, start off on the right foot. But when you've got folks that are kind of pushing back a little bit on something that's not necessarily anything they can push back on legally or in regards to what the requirements are with the covenants.
Maybe like a matter of opinion than a matter of.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit. I'm getting the feeling that's what we're going to be heading into a little bit with one of the folks that's on the board, and James knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, James, how do we handle that?
Well, it's interesting. And you mentioned legal. So it's important. I'll just touch on that real quick because I don't think many people understand how it goes from a federal level all the way down to an HOA level, because people don't understand why do they have so much power. It actually does trickle down. It goes federal, state, county, and city. Then the HOA or ACC or whatever they want to call themselves does actually have the final say and is the most it is actually legal at the end of the day. If they make a determination on something, you can obviously appeal it and stuff like that. The frustrating thing about that is typically as you go down those levels, the more opinionated it becomes, as you're finding out, which is always the fun thing to do. So I just try and lean as heavily onto two things as I possibly can. One is what they've written, and one is what is already in the neighborhood, and taking photos and stuff like that. If there's already an example of it, then you already have a pretty good argument to get it across the line. Of course, then you often have these groups that'll come back and say, yes, that was then, this is now, right? But the problem with that argument is that then they end up with half the houses looking one way, and then the next half of houses, because of changed the rules, looking another way, and it's not a consistent design guideline for the whole thing. So it is tricky. But yeah, I would lean on those two things as much as possible: what is written, and then what is already in the neighborhood. And then just try and hold accountable what is opinionated versus what is fact and written down, I suppose.
It's a fine line to walk, right?
Yeah. Most of the time they're pretty good. I have had different HOAs come back and say, hey, we don't want to see the garage on that side of the house. We want it on the other side of the house. So you're going to put the garage and the driveway on the other side of the house, which changed the design considerably. And it was very frustrating for the clients, which they agreed to in the end, but it was like a process that the HOA wasn't going to budge on. Yeah, and then I guess some of the HOA things, it's like earlier on, and this is what I guess you're kind of coming up against, Jay, is early on it's actually quite easy to get a building designed and built. The more people that end up living in the neighborhood, and if there's only a couple of blocks left that aren't built on yet, it actually becomes harder, even though the rules are the same, because you have more voices and you have new people that are living in the neighborhood and stuff like that. So yeah, they're normally pretty lenient for the first couple of houses, which is interesting that they wouldn't establish like the rules really strict on the first couple of houses, because then that dictates what's built after it. So yeah, that's about as much as I can cover it, I guess, because it's a hard one because it is opinion based. Yeah.
Well, I would add on to that, because you don't know this, James, but fruit baskets, gift cards, and little, nicety bribes like that, they could help to build those relationships.
I mean, if they could come over and just have a party on your deck at the end of the day once it's built, I mean, I'm sure they'll change their mind.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, James, or Jay, I'm sorry. That's a difficult one because, like you said, you don't want to stir the hornet's nest or whatever.
Yeah.
It's because you
don't
can't.
want to start with an antagonistic relationship with your new neighbors.
No.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, but I do think just how you go about it, like even if you're in the right. It's just like the how, which is it's kind of the good thing is you have somebody like James. Myself and our project manager involved. So typically having smart conversations and not adversarial conversations, and just the strength of numbers and wisdom and that too. So we can kind of finesse how we present things without just trying to bully and bulldoze around. But yeah, that's a complicated issue, but it's one that it needs to be talked about. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Jay.
And I'll just add to that. I am a pro HOA kind of guy because, sometimes it's difficult with these things that you've got to deal with. But at the end of the day, if you don't have an HOA and you've got a beautiful home and the house next to you could be, a stripped down double wide if there's no, or whatever, if there's no rules there. So the HOAs absolutely serve a purpose. I think they're beneficial. It's managing the relationships. That's the important
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, we complain about them all the time. People say, "Oh, great, it's unrestricted." I'm like, "Well, that is good. There's some good things there." But to your point, Jay, what if without an HOA, what does the rest of the community look like? And
Yeah.
they're good. They're also a necessary evil at times. So, well, guys, thank you. I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. We almost hit an hour, and it didn't feel like that because the conversation was so fun. But Dawn, any closing words? What's been your favorite thing about working with Reynard?
Oh, just being able to design something around our budget, I guess. I know it's going to be way more than we're hoping for it to cost probably, but just having that flexibility, just knowing that we're not trying to build like a 5,000 square foot home. We're trying to stay a little bit more on the smaller side, knowing that we have so much acreage that we could, kind of spread out. But
Yeah.
So for us, it's just been, and I mean, for me, like just the communication's excellent. Even like having, what is her name? Allie to check in. Allie checks in, just like
She's great.
really great. The communication's amazing. Even from the get-go when I first contacted you all, we're like so great at just always checking in with us. And even after we were like, sorry, we're not going to proceed further because of our music building, and Drew still checked in every few months. And I was like, I always kept you all in my mind, of course. And I was like, we will contact them when we're ready, so.
I sure do appreciate it. We've loved working with you guys.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of the design that you came up with James together. And same for you, Jay. I can't wait to, hopefully it's less than a year from now, we see these homes built and completed, and we're out getting some amazing photos of those also. Well, James, we'll plan on doing this again next month, and I think it's been really helpful just to hear from you and Jay and Dawn. I really appreciate y'all because you've helped me learn a lot too, just hearing from your experiences. So with that being said, unless there's any follow-up questions, I'll go ahead and wrap us up.
Nothing here. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Somebody in the peanut gallery wanted to chime in, Jay. You sound like a dog barking at you.
Yeah, I've got a couple here too, Don. So they interrupt every
That's why I
call.
keep muting. I'm like,
They just had to get the last word. I get that. All right. Well, y'all have a great evening. James, you have a great morning, and we'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye.